For years, Wilhelm Ahrens walked the same path from Tanunda to Lindok to visit his sweetheart Alma.
Wilhelm was my grandfather, and he was actually born near Gawler in South Australia. As a lad, he worked up in Tanunda. He worked in a blacksmith shop up there.
One morning in 1898, 25-year-old Wilhelm Ahrens made the decision to leave his home and work in Tanunda to head for the Golden Mile in Kalgoorlie and the glimmer of possibilities the gold rush offered a young blacksmith. Wilhelm and Alma were married on June 14, 1898. And several days later, the couple set off with a vision of building a home for the family they had dreamed of. Kalgoorlie was a booming city, and for years Wilhelm worked hard in the blacksmiths around the goldfields. But his dream to provide a proper home for his family had not been fulfilled. In 1903, Wilhelm made the decision to take his wife and 2 young children home to the Barossa Valley.
He came back to Sheoak and worked the little Goy's premises for 3 years, and the Blacksmith Shop the Gearshers used to own came on the market.
Times were very tough in those days. I think he even had to borrow money to buy the thing in the first place.
So he got a bit of help from Alma's father, lent some money, and they went to the auction and they purchased that.
And really this was the beginnings of the Ahrens era in Sheoak.
From 1906, the Ahrens became a central part of life in Sheoak, with Wilhelm's blacksmith shop a hub of activity, and Alma taking over duties as postmistress.
It became quite a community spot, the blacksmith shop and the post office. My grandmother took that over in 1908, and between my mother and her, they had it for 77 years.
Meanwhile, Willem worked in the workshop at Sheoak for more than 50 years. But little did he know that the Ahrens dynasty was destined to continue on. Bill Ahrens joined his father in the blacksmith shop in 1922 when he was aged 18.
My grandpa, he really wanted to be a school teacher. He really didn't want much to do with the business. He basically got involved in the business because there was nobody else there to do it.
Over the years in the workshop, father and son worked harmoniously at the forge and anvil to produce a myriad of steel articles for farmers in the district. Wilhelm and Bill Ahrens were well-known and respected tradesmen in Sheoak and for many miles beyond.
They were indeed a well-known family because they did all the work for the farmers in this area.
It more or less became the village square.
Towards the middle of the century, the blacksmith shop remained a central point, not just for the Ahrens family, but for the entire Sheoak community. However, it wasn't until Bob came to work for the business in 1959 that progress accelerated at what the first 2 generations of Ahrens considered to be an alarming rate.
I was working on a farm and I made a decision to come back and help in the business. I made a decision in 1959 that I'd make that my permanent work.
First of all, we wanted to be a steam engine driver, then he was going to be a farmer, and he was actually heading over to help his uncle Cliff, and his grandmother broke down in tears and said, you know, Bob, there's no one here to help your dad at the blacksmith shop. So, you know, I think Dad broke into tears, and he said, okay, Grandma, I'll stay.
Bob pushed hard for change in the business, but he found the other generations hard to convince at times.
Not a great deal of change occurred while I was working here. It was pretty primitive. Dirt floors, smoke from the forge.
It was rather a depressing sort of place to come to, but I treat it as a challenge.
Dad's a real entrepreneur on the engineering side, and he most probably was quite cheeky, and where my grandpa was most probably a bit too scared to do things because of what my great-grandfather would say. Dad just went in at nights and he would make little changes and little improvements.
One night I worked late and I threw the old hand forge out and put a new blower on the forge. And I came in next morning to proudly show my grandfather what I'd done. And he met me at the door and he said, "Well, son, am I allowed in this bloody place this morning?" I hadn't stopped to think that fella had turned that forge since he started the blacksmith shop. And all of a sudden a little fella like me had come in and changed all that.
But perhaps the biggest transition for the Ahrens family was in the early 1960s when the business started making small sheds. It was at this time that Frank Coleman, a farmer at Roseworthy, wanted a barn built, and Ahrens decided to take it on. It was the very first building by Ahrens and is still standing today. The business had evolved from a blacksmith shop to a manufacturing workshop. In 1964, a new workshop was erected and Ahrens hired its first employee.
And the business at that time was only very small. There was only the one small shed, and the whole business has just grown bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Sheds were still in big demand, and Ahrens increased its range of farm buildings. They won a tender from the Gawler Trotting Club to construct their new betting pavilion in 1964. It was Ahrens' first ever industrial building. It was a custom-built, all-steel building, and it led Ahrens into a different era with the business. They were now ready to take on industrial work and started tendering for these types of jobs. From the late 60s, W. Ahrens and Sons began to forge a reputation all over South Australia for their industrial buildings and rural products. The company also grew in size. By the end of the 1970s, Ahrens Engineering employed over 20 staff.
Well, when I first started here, Bob's father, Bill, he was making Averys and bandsaws and stuff like that.
Dad is a real innovator. He got into developing land rollers and stone rollers and sheds and silos and field bins and really went for it. And, I just admire him so much. And then, of course, Mum came on board as well, and she was a great financial stability. And, together they have just built such an unbelievable foundation.
A recession had hit the rural industry, and Bob Ahrens was basically involved in doing bins. And I was seeking another structural steel supplier and erector, and I dropped a set of plans on his desk, and they were successful. And from then, I guess it's developed from a subcontract to friendship.
With the support of Barry Claby and Paul and Peter Sitzer, Ahrens became one of the leading structural steel suppliers in the Northern Territory in the late 1980s. A rock-solid foundation had been laid for the fourth generation to join the business. And in 1988, Stefan Ahrens joined the family business full-time.
I really didn't see it as Steph taking over. I just see it as a younger part of the family coming in and holding on to the reins a bit.
Look, I can remember my grandfather had a problem with the changes that my father wanted to make. And my father had a problem with changes that I wanted to make. And for sure, I've had problems with Stefan and some of the changes he wanted to make.
We decided to go for the Northern Territory. It was a very hard thing. I was only most probably 21, 22, and trying to talk Dad into doing that was quite a difficult thing. And, he had started that, but once we got the facts on paper and Dad could see that was a positive thing for the business, we went for it.
We did a lot of work for the Northern Territory, like in the gold mine for Mount Todd, Ernest Henry, and those jobs really got Steph going.
From its base at Sheoklog, Ahrens Engineering began to reach across Australia, setting up offices in Sydney and Brisbane and successfully quoting on some of the biggest industrial building and structural steel jobs in Australia. Stefan had learnt well from his father. He saw that diversity and a strong team were the key elements in growing the business, and grow it did.
It's been like a ride in a rocket. I wouldn't think it's been a roller coaster ride. It's always been up and very fast and quick.
Stefan's sort of taking those big chances and it's really paid off for him.
For 5 years in a row, from 1996 to 2000, Ahrens was included in the BRW Fast 100 and again in 2003 and 4. In 1998, Ahrens Engineering bought Sherwell's. In 2000, they bought Webster Silos. And in 2002, M&S Steel Buildings became part of the Ahrens family, as Ahrens sought to become the best quality supplier of industrial and commercial buildings, silos and sheds throughout Australia. Now a united force, Ahrens Engineering continued to expand its business. At the core of its success was the dedication of its employees, who made the most of every opportunity that presented itself to Ahrens.
We've got many people here that just put in such a huge effort, and they're part of our Ahrens family.
I've worked there for about 5 years now. Started off in the workshop, did a couple of years out there, and now I'm in the office drafting. And the changes that I've seen those 5 years have been unbelievable. In the workshop, I mean, the task force has almost doubled. Same in the office, you know, they're just employing people all the time and just going from strength to strength.
If you're up to the challenge, they'll throw more on you. And so there's never a dull moment. It's not as if you feel that that's all you're ever going to do in your life. You've got potential to sort of, if you choose to go on and do bigger and better things.
It was good to know that you could advance in this company, which gave you a real goal to achieve.
I've done a lot of things that I would have never done if I hadn't worked for them.
They really want to put a lot of effort into their people. They're very passionate about their people and their culture, and that really excited me. I thought I'd never been in that environment before with any other companies I'd worked with prior.
The longevity, success and growth experienced over the past 100 years can be attributed to Ahrens' core principles of providing a one-source, all-solutions approach, a level of service without compromise, and a commitment to staff that has seen the Ahrens family expand to over 250 people, not just our employees, but a part of our extended family.
Working for Sherwell's was okay. But when we were asked to come up here and when Ahrens took us over, it was just great because you felt like you were part of a team.
It's a family-run business and they treat you exactly like a family.
You can't do anything without your employees. They're just such a critical part of everything.
Working for a family business, I really enjoy it. I think it's a much closer-knit environment. You get to know a bit more about the people rather than just having more of a corporate structure with people, managing directors that you never sort of see and things like that. So I really like the family side of it.
I'd love nothing more to see another Ahrens fifth generation come into play and me to help support that in any way.
With Ellen and Riley, if they want to get involved in the business, I think that would be absolutely fabulous. But at the end of the day, they're their own individuals and it's important that they do what they're going to be happy with. But, you know, I'd be rapt if they got involved in the business.
With the culture that's running through our company at the moment, there's nothing I don't believe that we can't do, and I believe that the people that we have are so passionate about what we do. They love it.
You know, I work very hard, as do everyone else here, to you know, keep pushing on for the future. We see these other jobs keep coming through. We want to do them better, faster, more cost effective. And I see the company just growing and growing.
One day, we hopefully will be recognised throughout Australia as one of the leading, industrial commercial builders.
I would never have imagined this place that I worked in those so many years ago would come to the stage that it's at now.
I honestly believe that in 100 years' time, we'll definitely be here. There's no doubt.
I guess for sure there could be another 100 years there.
I reckon they've got another 100 years in them.
This place is going to go further than what anybody expects, I think. And I'm sure that if my father was to come back right now, he would smile at the way things have gone.